welcome to the Pages of Light podcast, your destination for discussions of popular fantasy and science fiction novels from a Christian worldview. My name is Tyler, aka Verum, and with me, as always, is Gabriel, aka the Quarantine Quartermaster. Welcome back to the podcast. How are you doing on this fine week?
It's a good week, Tyler. I have dropped my first episode of Q2 and the Boss Present.
Oh yeah.
If you're listening to this, you can go and check out my first actual podcast that I'm releasing. You know, Tyler and I were talking. We produced 32 podcasts, so we've been growing as podcasters, and it's nice to dive out on my own and try. I'm reviewing The Last of Us, so yeah. I'm excited about that. I've been talking about it a lot. I've been telling people at school. It's been fun, so. That's where I am right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm sure you feel very accomplished. I know whenever I started doing just videos by myself, and whenever we started the podcast, it always feels good to, plan something and then execute it and then do the editing and all that stuff. And then whenever you finally hit the publish button, it's like, I actually made something and I put it out into the world. There's a sense of like you feel really, very good about it whenever you're done. So
yeah, I'm excited. I'm still waiting on getting approval from Apple Podcasts to I'm up on Spotify within minutes of putting it on there, and Apple, they're like, it could take up to 10 days. So I will be waiting for that.
Apple has to review your podcast to make sure it meets their standards, I guess, or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Cool, yeah, well, that's exciting. And I'll put a link to Gabe's podcast down in the description. And probably by the time you hear this episode of our podcast, there'll be a few episodes of Gabe's podcast out at that point. So you can go down there and check that out, especially if you're interested in the Last of Us game or in the Last of Us TV show. So I myself have played the game, but I have not watched the TV show. So I might wait until I watch the show to listen to Gabe's podcast, because you know me, I'm the anti-spoiler guy, so.
He can't take a spoiler, audience. He cannot do it.
Even though I know the entire storyline of the game, I just can't do it.
He just can't do it.
There's just something inside me that I feel like I'm ruining a piece of the media for myself.
Well, if you're gonna I fully support you saving yourself for watching the show. I fully support that, because it is that good.
Yeah, it is.
It really is. They're doing so well with it. So I support you.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, find the link in the description to go check that out if you would like. And my week's been pretty good. Was a little bit under the weather earlier in the week, but I am back to 100% now, and I'm looking forward to going back into Vinland Saga. But before we do that, make sure you check out Pages of Light on social media, and check out the YouTube channel as well, and go subscribe over there so you can check out the video version of the podcast and also all of the other videos that I have up on that channel. And you can also head over to our website, pagesoflight.com, to support us over there. Like I said, we're going to be doing Vinland Saga, and this is going to be the book 3 hardcover if you have that edition, and we're going to be doing chapters 29 to 35, and I'm just really loving Vinland Saga. It's a nice change of pace, especially when you just came from reading Wheel of Time, which is very methodical and plotting and lots of character development and world building and all those things that are slowly built out over the course of thousands of pages of the Wheel of Time. So, and then this is much more, there is character development in this, but it's much more fast paced and quick. And it's a joy to be reading this and jumping back into the series. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Yeah, it's a good, the way we have it set up, where we kind of go back and forth, and we read shorter Vinland sagas, and then we do our longer book. It's a nice contrast, especially with the prep. The prep for this book is so much easier, but it's also still good because we get a lot of content out of it too. So I like it.
Cool. All right. We're going to jump into, as always, our favorite quote. And yeah, I guess I'll start off. So my favorite quote is from towards the beginning of this book. And it's on page 28 or 25 to 28. And it's from Prince Canute. And he's talking to, there's a scene where the priest guy who's kind of I guess he's kind of a drunk. And he's having this thing where he's like basically praying to God, and he's asking him, you know, like, why did you let all of the people die in the village? Like we mentioned in the last episode, if you want to check that out. And he's basically like, why did you forsake us? Basically, is kind of what he's going for. And Prince Canute, he comes out with this quote, and he says, "Silence! You dare to doubt God, and you call yourself a follower of Christ. You ought to be ashamed. Doubting God's love is the last thing a devout Christian should ever do. There is no father who would not love his own son." And yeah, I just like this quote, and it just points to like the different perspectives that or not perspectives, like different situations and state of minds that Christians can find themselves in. Because, you know, Canute and the priest are both Christians, but they've both experienced the same situations because they've been in the same group. So they have the same experiences, and the priest is kind of in a sense asking God, like, why is he letting these things happen? And he's doubting God, whereas Prince Canute is more of the, you know, you have to trust God no matter what happens kind of end. And we also see this play out in scripture as well, like many of the Psalms. You know, David is asking, like, you know, why have you forsaken me? Like all of these different things. And so just interesting to see like the different contrast between how like you can still be a Christian, but you can have two different approaches to the same situation and different responses to how you think about, you know, God's role in that situation. And this just made me think of, there's a hymn called "How Deep the Father's Love for Us," which I thought was a really old hymn, but it turns out it only came out in 1995, which was quite surprising to me. But I don't know, that might be wrong. I feel like that's wrong. There was a website.
Maybe that's just like when that artist did it.
Maybe that was the copyright for that particular version. Maybe, I don't know. Mm-hmm. Well, anyways, so the lyrics, the opening lyrics to that hymn go, "How deep the Father's love for us, how vast beyond all measure, that he should give his only son to make a wretch his treasure." And I like this hymn because it just points to kind of Canute's situation with his father, where his father does not, it seems like his father doesn't love him. And so he's kind of in a conundrum where he has his heavenly father who loves him, but his earthly father does not love him. And so there's like this stark contrast between those two things. And I think that this hymn kind of points to how deep our Father's love for us, like our heavenly Father, and you know that he has given his only son for us so that we can be his treasure. And you know, of course, you have John 3:16, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him should not die but have everlasting life," the classic passage. And then there's also a passage in Romans here, Romans 5 verses 6 through 8, which says, "For while we were still weak, at the right time Christ died for the ungodly. For one will scarcely die for a righteous person, though perhaps for a good person one would dare even to die. But God shows his love for us, and that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us." And I just love this picture because we see in King Swen, who is Prince Canute's father, he is, you know, he's not doing that at all. Like he's saying, you know, Prince Canute is basically not the son that he wanted, and he's not the son that he wants him to be. Like he wants him to be a different type of person than who he is. And so because of that, he basically doesn't love him. And as we find out later, you know, he basically sent his son into a situation where he expected him to die. And so it's a contrast between the father sending Prince Canute to die, his son to die, versus our Heavenly Father sent his own son to die for us. So it's just an interesting contrast there. And so, yeah, I just like this quote, and yeah, I'm coming to like Prince Canute as a character, even though we kind of roasted him in. I feel like we roasted him in the last episode because he was kind of being, he wasn't being the leader that we thought he should be. But I think he's going to have some big character development in the next few sections of this book. So there's my quote.
Yeah, I like the parallel you drew about like how, you know, on Earth we have like some people have expectations of their children and they're not matching up, and then they don't show their love, and then our Heavenly Father is always showing love, and he loved us so much that he sent his only son to die.
Right.
And so yeah, that was a good, I like the way that you brought that up, because Swen is definitely like following the earthly path of like, I don't like what I'm seeing here, instead of just having unconditional love and sending him out to die.
Right.
So both sons are going to die, but for two completely different reasons.
Right.
My quote is from Thorfinn, and this is when he is riding into the battle at the end of like these chapters here, and he is shouting at the top of his lungs. He's just rode in on his horse. He's like pulling into like in between Thorkel and Askeladd, and he goes, "Don't you dare do anything to Askeladd. He's my prey. Lay a single finger on him and I'll kill you. Understand me, you monster? Touch him and I'll kill you." He's all worked up. And I just think it's so interesting, like his psychology, that it's almost like there's this emotional attachment to like owning the killing of Askeladd. Like that is like, we've talked about revenge before, and like, but he's so like, his heart is so invested in it. Like he is possessive over this, you know, which is unhealthy, right?
Yes.
And I don't even know how to go into like all the sin that's going on there, like the revenge, and then like the like the pride, like telling people they can't do things because like I'm gonna do them first, and like you shouldn't like cross my boundary, like you should know that this is my thing that I'm going to do, and you better back off. So like it's interesting that there's that living inside of Thorfinn, and then like, but when the Vikings are like raping the women of the village, Thorfinn is the one who's walking away, and they're like, oh, he never participates in any of this, you know. So you know, characters are complex and people are complex, so you know, in that way he's showing honor to God by honoring people and not taking advantage of them. But here he's got this deep possession of like, I'm going to kill Askeladd, and it's really part of his identity. So I thought this this particular quote highlights that part.
Right. And it's interesting also because like he'll get worked up over this thing with Askeladd, but he won't get worked up over the raping and murder of innocent people. You know what I mean? Like he'll walk away from those things and not participate, but he won't speak up and say, what you're doing is wrong. So because it's a personal situation with his own family, the murder of his father, then he gets worked up because it really involves him. But other people just kind of like, just do whatever you want to do, but I'm not going to do it. So there's...
Yeah, you do you, Vikings. You do you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Interesting psychology for sure. And I'm just... There's a lot of these characters, they kind of set them up in a certain light, and they have certain things that they do in certain situations that they're in, and I'm just very interested to see like how they change, and as we see them in different situations, if their reactions to different things change. And so I'm just very interested in seeing where all of those things go, especially with Thorfinn, with Askeladd, and Prince Canute. Those are probably my three characters that I'm most interested in seeing what they do in the future. So yeah, that's a good quote. Cool. All right, as always, if you have a favorite quote, leave it in the comments. We'd love to chat with you about it. and let us know why you liked it, and maybe the Christian element that you pulled out of it, or biblical or scripture that you liked or that you thought aligned with that particular quote. And let us know. But we're going to jump into some book discussion, and as I said, we're doing chapters 29 to 35. So chapter 29 is called Father and Son, and so this opens up it opens up on a cross, which is interesting. So the chapter is called Father and Son. It opens up on a cross where you have, that immediate imagery of Jesus going to the cross and getting the wrath of the Father for us, for the sins of the world. So I just thought that was an interesting way to open up the chapter and a way to title the chapter. And I think a lot of Vinland Saga is just like about family and about, the relationships between those people. And I don't know. Vinland Saga is just great. You should, if you're not reading it, you should pick it up and read it. It's great. But anyways, we open up this chapter with, what's his name again? Floki. Right, Floki. Right. So this is Floki, and he's going to King Sven, and he's basically coming here, and he's telling him that Prince Canute has gone missing, and he's pretty sure that, they're pretty sure that he might be dead. And so King Sven is kind of, at the end of this scene, he's kind of saying, I'll just read this quote here. It says, if he had only the talent of his elder brother, Harold, my son would not have gone missing in the first place. Don't you think so, Floki? And he says, a most astute observation, sire. So there's clearly a preference to the younger brother in this case, and because he obviously has the traits that King Sven would prefer his son to have, and so I think he wishes that he wishes his firstborn, whose heir, Prince Canute, had the traits of his younger son, Harold. And I was talking about this. Gotta have my Lord of the Rings reference here. So
get it in early this time.
Yeah, get it in early before I get put on the spot at the very end of the episode to just pull something out of my hat. But this definitely reminds me of the relationship between Steward Denethor and his two sons, Boromir and Faramir. And if you remember in the movie, Denethor certainly prefers his older son Boromir to the younger son Faramir, and for similar reasons. Like, he prefers Boromir's leadership style, and Boromir is a little bit more active and he's a little bit more vocal, and Faramir is just different. He's a little bit more soft-spoken. Maybe he leads from the background a little bit more. His role is more his role as a ranger instead of the knight in shining armor leading on the front lines of the battlefield, whereas Faramir is more in the backgrounds and doing the stealth and kind of things. So just some differences in their character, and the father definitely prefers the traits of the other one. And at one point in the movie, Faramir confronts his father, and he's like, you wish that I'm the one who died and not Boromir. And then his father's like, yeah, I do. So he just tells him straight up, yeah, I wish you were dead, and I wish Boromir was the one who was alive. And so just a very similar kind of story line that we have here in Vinland Saga, where King Sven, similar kind of power dynamic too. He's the king versus the heirs of the throne. So yeah, there you go. Got my Lord of the Rings quote in, or Lord of the Rings reference in.
Nicely done.
Did you have any thoughts on just that dynamic of father-son relationship with the heir and all that?
Yeah, just you need to love your kid for who they are. As an educator, yeah. I have worked with probably thousands of kids at this point. And it's so important just to cultivate who they are and not force identity on them, and because everyone is made in the image of God, and we need to honor their strengths and help them with their weaknesses. That's what we should do. And and you know, it's different back then, but like it shouldn't have been. Like, should always be about like working with people and bringing them what they need to be like what's good for them. So like as an educator, I believe that you need to individualize the way that you love people. It's like we write IEPs for kids. They need special way to be educated, and everyone needs special ways to be loved.
Right.
That's my thought.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for the insight. Let's continue on. So we have a scene here with Thorkel, and he's very sad because the winter is here, and that means that all the battles are going to stop. And, Thorkel, he loves a good fight, and so he's just sad about it. And he's also sad because there's word on the street, or I guess word in the air. I don't know, I guess there are streets in this world. But the word is that there's going to be a treaty between the Danes and the English, and that also makes Thorkel sad because that means all the battles are going to stop. And I think Thorkel, he's like, I want to make this war go on as long as possible because he just likes to fight. And we got, his worldview is like, if you don't die, like the greater the battle that you die in, like the more your reward is in Valhalla. And that's kind of his mantra for a lot of the scenes that he's in whenever he's like encouraging his troops. Remember, he wants people to like pick up their swords and like die like men so you can be in Valhalla. Mm-hmm. And all this kind of stuff. So so he's sad about that, and he does not want the treaty to happen. And then later on we get a short scene here where the girl from the end of the last episode, or the last section of the book, is found, the one who stole the ring. And they find her because she's the one survivor from that village that they slaughtered in that tragic scene. I'll watch our last episode if you want to check out that. But they slaughtered a whole village, and one girl survived. And so they find her, and they figure out that the Danes are in the area. And so now the English are going to be converging on them. And then we get the ear. The ear is listening, and he thinks he hears the English coming. And so they're going to prepare for battle here. And
the way they characterize him is so like comical.
Yeah,
like the way he's got his huge ears, and he's have these like distinctive like Asian features. it's just like he's almost like comic relief in a way. It's funny.
Yeah, a little bit. But yeah, so they make a few comments, and the ear has a comment about Christianity, or maybe that was in a different chapter. Maybe I'm misremembering. I think that was in a different chapter. But then we go to a scene with Ragnar and Prince Canute and Thorfinn. And this is where my quote is from, where I just mentioned, so I won't go super into depth. But basically the priest is, lamenting all of the stuff that's happened and asking God, why must you test us? For what reason do you see fit to test who we are, who are so powerless? He's basically like doing the whole complaining to God kind of thing, which, I mean, we see a lot of that in the scripture. And so it's not to say that that's like an improper, response, but maybe it's just like, sometimes it's just hard to trust God whenever you're going through something that is so difficult, and there is just a piece of you that, even though you like, I'm sure the priest knows intellectually that God loves him and he's always doing the best for him, but there's just a piece of you that's like, man, why are you letting this happen in my life? Or why did you let something that I saw happen to those people? Like, why did you let that happen to those people? And I think it's just a natural human reaction to, human suffering and, tragedy. So I think it's a perfectly reasonable response from the priest. And as we see that in a lot of David's Psalms, who had a similar posture to God. But I think David always came back and reminded himself, God wants the best for him, and he's loving, and he's the shepherd, what I think is that in Psalm? Is that Psalm 23?
I don't know the Psalms that well at all. I like Proverbs.
But yeah, we see a lot of that in the scripture as well. So good parallel. But that's where we have my quote where Prince Canute is like, you can't doubt God and all of this kind of stuff. You can go back in the podcast if you missed it or want to re-listen to it. But there's also an interesting scene at the end of that where, Prince Canute is having this comment about, father, there is no father who does not love his son, which is interesting because his father doesn't love him. Even though he's saying that out loud, he knows that that's the case, that his father, maybe he doesn't want to believe that his father doesn't love him, but there's you can tell by his expression that he feels like it's hard for him to say those words because he feels like his father doesn't love him as much as he should. But then we also have the contrast with Thorfinn, who his father is dead, and we know that his father definitely loved him so much that he died for him. And so we have the complete contrast, and this is one of the major themes that I put for this episode, is the contrast between King Sven as a father and Thor's as a father, where one is sending his son to die and the other is dying for his son. So both fathers are doing opposite things for their sons. So I just think it's an interesting contrast. And now we have Thorfinn and Prince Canute bonded together. They are, Thorfinn is the one who is, in charge of defending and protecting Prince Canute. So I think definitely there's going to be some character building between those two, just because they've had such different experiences with their father and they can maybe speak into each other's lives. So yeah, it'll be interesting for sure. And then I think this last scene here is we get Thorkel finding out that the Danes are holed up in this village, and he's very excited about this because he gets to go and have a battle with them. And so he's like, wake everybody up, we're gonna get all these foods. And I like this scene where he's like, we need rations, pack enough for 500 men for 5 days. And this guy's like, you can't be serious. That's so much food. It's ridiculous. Because in the previous scene, they were basically eating all the food that they had in this place. And the chef or the cook guy was very annoyed at all of them. So, you know how Danes, they just kind of they go on their big parties and they just eat and eat and eat and eat. And they don't have any care for the stockpiles in the stores and all of that. So that's chapter 29. A lot of things in that chapter. So, but I guess we're setting up for the rest of this section. So there you go. Did you have any other thoughts on chapter 29?
I think you covered most of the major parts, and I like that your ties to scripture and the how the different fathers are treating their sons. We have the Father in heaven, we have King Sven, and we have Thor. So no, I think you did it. I think you did it well.
Cool. Well, Gabe's going to take us into the next chapter.
Master and the servants' dining table. So we open up with the ears was on the lookout in the last episode, and he mentioned something about the snow dampens my ability to hear. Right. He's and so Askeladd is saying we don't have to send out troops and broadcast our location because we have the ear. He's able to hear for us. And then we find some workers, and Askeladd is talking to them about readying the sleds. And he was like, we need to leave. So essentially, Ears has heard that there are troops over 100 coming this way, and so Askeladd has made the decision we are going to leave this place. And so he's talking to the sled people, and they are in disbelief that they have found them so quickly. because it's revealed in like one of these pages that like they've only been there for 10 days, and that is not a long time because they're trying to camp out the winter.
Yeah.
And they have just slaughtered they haven't. Askeladd made the order to slaughter everyone in that village.
Yep.
And they missed one, and now that's why they're going to be on the run. So in this chapter we have Thorfinn, and he's out hunting. And Thorfinn has supernatural speed almost and accuracy. His father was Thor's, so it's like hereditary. It's like passed down in the blood that he's got like super kinetic speed, and super powered. But he's got a rabbit that he's killed, or hare, and he's walking back with his kill when he's hailed by Ragnar, who is in charge of protecting Prince Canute, and he kind of strong arms Thorfinn into coming in. He's like, "You need to come with us," basically. And so Thorfinn comes into the cabin, and Canute is going to cook dinner, which is not a typical role for an heir to the throne. Yep. That's kind of like menial labor. And then we have this funny reaction by Thorfinn. Thorfinn's got his anime eyes going. He's very ooh, what is this food I'm about to eat? And then he takes a bite, and he's just it's got that little star next to his head, and his eyes are super big, and you can tell he's in love with what he's eating.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of a funny scene.
Well, I'm sure he's just been eating the worst because he's traveling all the time, so he's probably hasn't had a good home cooked meal since he left his hometown. Right.
Yeah.
So.
So we're learning a little about Canute. He's a cook, and Ragnar knows this about him. And this whole time, Ragnar and Canute are having talks about old times together, and Thorfinn's is just there eating and devouring his food. And there's this one frame where Canute and Ragnar are in discussion, but it's just vertical lines that are supposed to represent the words that they're speaking to each other. But Thorfinn's is so checked out that he's not even processing what they're saying. Which is in contrast to what happens next, which is his spidey sense goes off, and he's like, "What's going on?" And he runs over to the door, and as these armed men are coming in with swords, Thorfinn has the knife on them and is threatening them, and he gets the drop on them basically. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting that he's zoning out during dinner, but as soon as these guys shows up, he's ready. He's ready to defend himself, and
yep.
And so they are learning that the English have found them and that they're going to be on their way. And Ragnar does not like this news. He is very not happy with it. And he goes, "Bring me to Askeladd at once." And he's like, "I cannot believe this man is in charge, and he's making us march deeper into enemy territory, and I'm going to have my words with him." So Ragnar, it's funny, he literally has steam coming off of his head, and his face is turned beet red.
See the blood vessels popping?
Yeah. And then I like a couple frames later, it's just a close-up of his mouth, and all his teeth. And he's shouting
he's got he's got perfect teeth though.
He does have perfect teeth, but I just love that the whole frame, you don't even see his eyes. It's just a little bit of his nose, and then it's just focusing in on how much he's yelling. He's like, "I never liked him right from the start, standing in my way every turn, and now look where we are." And he's just going off. so mad at Askeladd, and he's like being led through the forest by these men, and he's like he's letting them know that he is not happy. And as he's walking through the forest, he just like there's this close up of his face, and he's like, "What just happened?" And then like on the next like page, he's like been speared from behind, like through his back and out his front. There's a sharp stick, and he turns around, and a man hiding in the snow, which is one of Askeladd's men, has like stabbed him.
Yep.
And Ragnar is a sturdy guy, and we see that from like the characters in this book.
Like
Thor's.
They're
Yeah, there's a lot of them that are superhuman. Like even this from Ragnar. He demands that Askeladd comes and sees him, and he's still surviving with this hole in his body, and he's still standing. Excuse my yawn. Gets late around here. And then so Askeladd arrives on scene because Ragnar is demanding to speak to him. And he does a swearing in of Askeladd. He's like, "You are going to protect Prince Canute as if it was your job." And Askeladd, which we learn he kind of flippantly goes, "I swear by the name of my god Odin." So he's like saying that he's going to follow these oaths, and once Ragnar has taken his oath, now he's going to reveal the secret.
But we know that Askeladd hates the Danes, and so his god is probably not Odin. He's just saying that. He's just basically lying. So that was my read on it, based on the reveal that we had in our last section of the book in book 2 of the hardcover. So.
Yep. Good catch there. So he's very flippant in his remark back to Ragnar. And so we learned that Canute has been sent to the front lines. We've already covered this a little bit. He's been sent to the front lines basically to die. King Sven has put him there because he believes that the other son, what's his other son's name?
Harold.
Prince Harold. He kind of wants him to become the heir to the throne. So he's putting his son in harm's way.
And you can even see, if you look on page 68, if you have a copy, like you have the contrast between Prince Canute and Harold. They're both like looking opposite each other. So you have like Prince Canute, who's kind of got the long, kind of girly hair, and he's shorter. And then you have Harold, who is taller. He's got a beard. He's got more of the Danish type hair. So he just like looks more of the part, and you can definitely get the contrast between why King Sven prefers the younger son Harold, because he has similar features to himself and the traits that he wants. So just thought I'd throw that in there.
Yeah. And this really throws a wrench into Askeladd's plan.
Oh, yeah.
Because Askeladd has Canute so that he can make a play for the Danish throne and basically trade in Canute. And so there's this funny frame where he goes, "Bah, like, why couldn't you... it would have been nice to know that from
the start,
like,
right?
From the start." And then after this has been revealed, Ragnar like crumples to the ground, and he's having this image of young Prince Canute, like in a vision, saying, "Oh, like when this is over, we'll have some bird together." And Ragnar knows that this is the end. And we finish up the chapter with a morbid owl eating an ear, which I'm pretty sure is from like the battle that had been going on between the English and Askeladd's men.
Right.
So, any thoughts on this chapter?
Yeah, I mean, it's like you have at the end of the last section, or the last book, hardcover book, like everything was going Askeladd's way. And then in this book, we kind of have the decline of Askeladd almost. Like all the decisions that he makes are like seemingly the wrong ones. Like his original plan to get Prince Canute back to King Swen, like that's kind of, he realizes that this is now a mistake, and now he's even killed his Prince Canute's protector, and so he thought he was trying to get him out of the way so that he would have more control over Prince Canute, but now he's like, now I don't even need Prince Canute because my whole plan from the beginning has been, thwarted essentially, because even, I'm trying to get Prince Canute back to King Swen, but King Swen doesn't even want Prince Canute. He's hoping that Prince Canute dies. And so now he's going to have to like rethink his entire strategy here. And this is just kind of the start of all of the things of like, that's going to go wrong for Askeladd in this section of the book. And so it'll be interesting to see when we get to the next episode, which we haven't read yet, they always mention like Askeladd's got really good luck, and they mention, his luck's running out. Like he's have made some bad decisions recently and all this kind of stuff. And so it'll be interesting to see like if that luck returns, or if that keeps going on a downhill trajectory for Askeladd. So yeah, it's interesting for sure. Cool. Yeah, that's all I had for that chapter. So the next chapter we have is chapter 31, which is History of Beasts. And at the beginning of this chapter, we have Prince Canute and Thorfinn finding out that Ragnar died, and they play it off, of course, as, he went and was fighting the English, and he died valiantly, and all this kind of stuff. And so they're obviously not going to come up and say, hey, we killed him. That would be stupid. And so, Prince Canute is like, you can tell that he's not like good on his feet. He like, it just seems like he like topples over. I guess like he's fainting almost. Maybe like, I'm sure it's, difficult for him to see his like basically only friend that he has with this Viking horde, to protect him. And so he probably is very, he's going to be upset about that. So yeah. And so now we have, Thorfinn, who's going to be the protector of Askeladd now.
Of Askeladd or Canute?
Yeah, of Canute, sorry. Too many characters. And then the next scene, we kind of get a conversation here with Askeladd and is it Bjorn? I think it's Bjorn.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And this is where we kind of get the information about, are you sure that was a good decision, Askeladd? He says, like, wasn't that a bit hasty, killing off Ragnar? And he was like, maybe, but he had to go at some point anyways, kind of a thing. So he kind of just brushes it off. And, Bjorn is starting to question, like, some of Askeladd's decision-making. And Askeladd kind of reminds him, like, why do you keep following me? And he kind of, like, reignites Bjorn's resolve, I guess, to follow Askeladd, because we'll find out later that Bjorn is one of the only loyal people in his army, and so it's good to have like someone who's like your right hand man that will, even though like you may have a right hand man and they may see, like if you're the leader, they may see you make a decision, you're like, I don't know if that was the best decision, but I'm still going to trust in you because of, maybe all the previous experience, the previous things that have happened in the relationship. There's some level of grace between, turning your back on somebody, so Bjorn is going to have that grace for Askeladd, whereas the rest of his men are not, which we'll find out here pretty soon. But But yeah, then basically we go to the next scene where we have they're torturing one of the English soldiers that they captured, and they're just basically beating him up, and they're saying we're going too easy on him. And so Askeladd comes in, making sure that they don't kill him. And Askeladd, he gets the scissors, and it's always, like whenever you have like those stereotypical torture scenes where you have like the guy who comes in, he's like very nice and soft spoken. He's like, I'm just gonna talk to you really nicely, but if you don't give me what I want, I'm just gonna cut off your fingers and stuff. So it's the contrast between like the nice talk versus the extreme violence that they're going to exact on the person. And so Askeladd is going to get his scissors, and he's going to start cutting off of his fingers if he doesn't tell him what he wants to know, which is basically how they knew that they were there. And I don't think he actually does tell them. I think he just says, he just says that they came and they killed one of his daughters, or they raped his wife and then daughter, and then killed them. I don't think that was the same village though. I think that maybe was a different village, because they killed everybody in the other village, and the only survivor was that girl. So, but yeah, so I don't think he actually gives all of the information that he wanted. But they do find out that Thorkel is going to be on the way as well. So that's going to be no good, because they kind of see the English as the easy prey, but the Danes and Thorkel, that's like an actually difficult army to fight. So and then we also have an interesting scene here when he's talking to this guy, where the English guy calls them beasts, and then Askeladd's like, I'll give you a free history lesson since you seem to be lacking in knowledge. Just thought that was funny. And he basically goes on this little story of, who owned the land before the English people came, and it was the Celts, who, that's where Askeladd is descended from. And so he's like, the Celts were here, and then you English people and came in, and you pushed all the Celts into this barren part of England and forced them to live in there, and then you guys took all the fertile land essentially. And so it's just one of those scenarios where, like, as happened many times in this part of history, basically just the stronger group just conquered the next group. So you had one group of people that was there, and then a stronger group came in, and then they conquered them, and then a few hundred years later another stronger group came in, and then they conquered them. And so they just have this repeat of history of the stronger people conquering the weaker people. And so his point is, like, the English are calling the Danish people beasts and killers, and then Askeladd's point is, you English people did the same things to the Celt people, or the Celtic people, not Celtish. And so that's kind of Askeladd's frame of mind here. And I mean, I don't know. What do you think of that perspective? Is that valid for Askeladd, or do you think he's kind of off on that?
Just drawing attention to like how people are hypocritical without even like realizing it.
Right, because like if you didn't know the history, like you wouldn't necessarily, like that wouldn't even be on your radar.
Yeah, I mean, again, we get to see that Askeladd has a depth of character. He has a formal education. He knows things about history.
Yep.
We saw that in the last book. And yeah, I think that this observation is Askeladd has perspective, I think is what this shows. Over the common man, over the common Englishman, over the common Danes. Askeladd is perceptive about what's going on. Yeah. I think that's my kind of major takeaway from that.
Yeah. Yeah, and we get some more torture scenes here, and then we have the ear coming back in. He's like, "There's troops coming, Askeladd," and this is where we find out when Thorkel's coming, and yeah, I mean they're kind of scared because they need to get on the run because Thorkel is a very competent fighter and his men are really trained, and I think he has more men than them. So,
well, he said he's got 500, which is a lot. It's a lot of men.
I think Askeladd only has about 100, if I remember from.
Yeah,
previous.
It was over 100. I think it was between 1 and 200.
Okay, yeah.
So they're going to be outnumbered like 4 or 5 to 1.
Yeah. And so now we get a scene with Thorkel, and he comes up here, and he basically says, don't kill the prince because we need him, and we also don't want to kill. He says there'll be a boy with daggers. Don't kill him either, and that's Thorfinn. And so, because Thorkel wants his rematch with Thorfinn, because he's got the blood of Thors, a true warrior. And so we'll get to look forward to that battle a little bit later on. And we get a scene here with Prince Canute, who's very, very upset that we're not going to have any kind of funeral or burial scene or anything for Ragnar, and he's not very happy about that. And Askeladd just like slaps him in the face and throws him in this cart essentially with all of these supplies, and everyone just kind of stops and like, did you just do that? Like basically like in shock of what he just did. And he basically just says like, Ragnar's dead. He will not come even if you call for him. And just like giving him the hard truth, about, he's dead. He's not coming back. And then you burying him isn't going to do anything to help him in the afterlife. And this is where, towards the end of this section, we start to get some rumblings of mutiny in the Askeladd camp. We find some deserters who are going to go to Thorkel. And it's just some of the troops are starting to question Thorkel or Askeladd's decision making, and he basically is like, go with the captain if you wish. That goes for all of you. Those who wish to leave, leave. I won't stop you. Those who will stay, march. And he's pretty matter of fact about it. He's like, if you want to leave, then just go. Leave. I don't care. And he's going to stay on his mission to try to get back to King Swen with Prince Canute. And that's basically where we end this chapter. Is now we're on the run again. It's Thorkel tracking Askeladd and his troop, which is where we were in the last book as well. So there you go. And then we end this scene with some of those people who decided to leave Askeladd's camp approaching Thorkel, and he just like slaughters them basically, even though they're here to surrender and to join their side. He's like, I don't care. I'll just
Yep.
His reasoning is interesting, which I'm sure you'll mention in a second.
Mm-hmm. So, that'll take us into chapter 32, which is called Deserters, and the opening frame is just Thorkel surrounded by disembodied body parts. They're flying around behind him. And he is discovering that the leader of the other group that he is pursuing is Askeladd. And as you mentioned, we're learning more about Thorkel's. These deserters mean that the band's faith has been shaken. It's safe to say that the main force won't have gotten far. So he's basically rallying all the troops to him and saying, we're going to catch these swine. These my bullies. He's like, let's go. And then we're going to go fast forward over land to Askeladd's group. And we see that their group is taking those sleds that those engineers were making in like the first chapter, and they're walking over a bridge. And Askeladd is calling for some trusted men, Thorgrim and Atli. And these men he's going to use them to sabotage the bridge. And he sends them underneath the bridge, and then they're having like a discussion, like, should we even do this? Like, is it going to... They're just going to wade through. But I almost think, like, it's the middle of winter, and if you force every single troop to go through water, like, that could lead them to being weak or sick or, you know. So I think there is an advantage to taking out this bridge, even though they're, like, second-guessing it.
Yeah.
And they're kind of talking about, like, betraying Askeladd. So we have this scene.
They're basically just debating, like, is it worth it, or will we make it out alive?
Mm-hmm. And, you know, the one guy's proposing his idea, and the other guy's responding, smuggle away the prince? Big bro. And then he's like, keep your voice down. So they're obviously plotting to go for Canute themselves and then cash in for a reward.
Yeah.
Which is very underhanded, which is very much the way Askeladd likes to roll. And then they talk about, then they show some frames of, like, the actual bridge being, like, down. But they know that hot on their heels, and they're kind of seeing something over the ridge there. All of the pikes and stuff. And then over the crest of the hill, like, right before, like, there's the river crossing, they're looking up behind where they had come from, and over the hill they see, like, some shiny stuff, and then it turns out it's the sun, like, glinting off the weapons of Thorkel's army, and we just get this frame of Thorkel going, I found, and then you, and with the you he, like, unleashes a big spear attack, and he's like,
he's so
even
far
though they
away.
don't, they like it's
Well, if you go back to page 129, you can see how far they are.
Yep. And I'm looking at that, and to me that looks like
That's got to be at least a mile.
Yeah, I was thinking like 7 or 8 football fields, like pretty far. And then Thorkel lands a hit, like, and right next to Askeladd. 4 guys are just impaled by this huge spear thrown by the huge Thorkel. If you don't remember from our discussion the last time, Thorkel is like a giant. He's like 8 feet tall, 9 feet tall, and he is just completely muscled up. So he is a strong warrior, and that's why he's able to land this superhuman hit from so far away. And then, like, these guys get hit, and they're right next to Askeladd, and Askeladd just kind of watches the blood spatter, like,
Yep.
well, I was close. I'm pretty sure that's all that's going through his mind.
It's like that scene a few, I guess a significant amount of chapters ago where Bjorn throws that spear and hits that guy behind the little drape when he's talking to Floki. He throws the spear like right past his head. Similar type scenario.
Yep. Except he wasn't expecting this spear.
Right. Yeah, I guess that was kind of a short chapter. Yeah, I mean, not a lot happened. I think it's just kind of like breeding the. It's like planting more seeds of all the troops trying to think about betraying Askeladd. So.
Mm-hmm.
And as we see in the next chapter, it's called Betrayal. So I wonder what's going to happen in this chapter. But yeah, so we open up on this chapter, and they're now they realize that they need to get a move on, and so he's getting everyone. He's like, "We got to move. We got to march," and this is where we have the confrontation here with all of his troops, and they're like, "March, march, march!" Like, we can't stop. We have to stop we have to stop marching, essentially, and they're not very happy about doing all the marching. And this is where we just have the confrontation. He's like, "Don't get cute with me, you thugs. If you want to leave, stay here and wash your blanks in the river. You can present yourself to Thorkel and be done with it." And he's same kind of stance that he had before. Like, if you want to leave, then leave. He's like, "I'm not going to keep you here." But their counter is, Thorkel wants the prince. He doesn't want us. And so they decide that we need the prince, and then you can go on your way and you can leave, and we'll keep the prince. And that's not going to fly with that's not going to fly with Askeladd, obviously. And then we kind of have this. He finally reveals this thing that we got the reveal of in the last section of the book, where he says, "I've hated every last one of you with every fiber of my being. You stinking, pig blanking, Danish, blank sons." So he gets a little into it, and I think
he gets the expletives out.
Yeah, he gets the expletives out. And then he just pulls out his sword and beheads 2 guys, which we've seen him do those types of things in previous sections. So that's not unheard of. And then he makes this. He's like, he yells Thorfinn, and now Thorfinn's got all of his knives out, because it's like we mentioned earlier with Gabe's quote. Thorfinn he's on Askeladd's side, and he's only on Askeladd's side to keep him alive long enough so that Thorfinn can kill him. And so we're in this scenario where Thorfinn isn't necessarily like, "Yay, I want to really help Askeladd." It's more like, I need to do what I can to keep him alive so that I can have my opportunity to kill him later. And so now Thorfinn gets out all of his knives, and he starts flinging them everywhere and taking out all the Danes that are around Askeladd. Mm-hmm. And then we have Bjorn. He's on the horse, and they're going to basically try to make an escape on this cart. He's got 2 horses, and so he's carrying Bjorn. He's got the prince. He's got the priest, and he also has Thorfinn. So there's 4 of them in this cart, 3 of them in the cart with Bjorn leading it. And so now they send some people after Bjorn, and then the rest of them start to attack Askeladd. And I mean, I like all these action scenes where you have, the horses going and all of the different people going after the horses. And Askeladd gets this axe, and he flings it at one of the people riding on the horses to help them out, and hits him right in the head. I feel like Askeladd, like, does he ever miss? Like, does he ever not hit somebody when he wanted to? He's like highly skilled and highly trained. So just seeing all of that is just fun to watch, even though it's kind of gruesome, but seeing his skill is cool. And then you get this scene with Thorkel as this all is happening. He's kind of like, they're getting closer and closer, and they can kind of see, what's happening here. And he can tell that there's basically a mutiny happening. And he's like, "Pathetic, everyone's afraid to die these days. This is outrageous." And he's just like disappointed that all the Danes are like fighting each other. They're having all this infighting because they they don't want to get attacked by Thorkel, and then they don't want to get killed by King Sven if the prince die, and all of this stuff. And then we have a scene here where we get the people on horseback who were chasing Bjorn and Thorfinn on the cart, and they're kind of chasing up and they're catching up to them. And one of the guys is talking to Bjorn. He's like, "Hey, you have to stop. Think about it. Make the right decision here." And Bjorn's like, "No, I'm not going to do that." And he's like, "You can try to take me down, but I'll just kill you all." And so instead of going after Bjorn, they go after his horses. And why is it that always the horses are just getting slaughtered in this episode, or in this manga? We have in the last section we had the Welsh people. They were shooting arrows at the horses, and now these guys are just taking axes and hitting horses in the head with them. If you like horses, then this might not be the manga for you. So just FYI.
Yep. Good warning there.
Yep. But yeah, we get a cool scene here where they hit the horse, and the horse tumbles, and then like the whole cart just like flips upside down, and like everybody goes flying, and Thorfinn goes one way, the prince and the priest go another way, and Thorfinn's very agile, and so he can kind of get his bearings in the middle of the air, and he manages to get near one of the horses and kick the guy off the horse. I think it's Atli, one of those guys.
Mm-hmm.
And so he kicks the guy off the horse, and then he gets on the horse, and now he's taking the horse, and he's going straight back to where Askeladd is, and this is where we get Gabe's quote in just a second here. But first, we have the scene with Bjorn lifting the cart up like superhuman, Superman kind of style, because he ate one of the special mushrooms, the Berserker mushroom. He's about to get his super strength and super crazy eyes. So we saw that at the was that in the first book? Where Thor's dies at the very end? I think it was in the first book.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this is just
Which
like a lot of...
seems so long ago.
It does feel like a long time ago. Yeah, so much has happened in the story since then. Thorfinn, he was just a young little boy, so innocent. And now
talking to Leif Erikson.
Yeah.
Eric Erikson.
Yeah, Leif Erikson, that was right.
Erikson. Yeah. Eric Erickson's a psychologist, sorry.
Oh.
Cross-wiring in my brain.
Mr. Erikson, please tell me about the story of Vinland. And now he's he has like a death wish essentially. He's on the horse
and he's in a mercenary group.
Yeah, he's on a mission. And so Thorfinn is going back to Askeladd so that he can save Askeladd so that he can kill him later. And we get a scene here towards the end of this section where we just get all these, people are dead. There's just like this scene of like littered bodies in Askeladd's wake, and he's been killing all of his own men because they're attacking him. And there was an interesting quote that he had here at the end. He was like, "To think that the great Askeladd couldn't fight his way out of a mere 50-man noose." He's like getting old as a bitch. So he doesn't even look that old. He's probably like 40 maybe. Would you say?
Yeah, I mean it's hard to determine an age here, but yeah, probably.
But anyway, so that's basically where we end that chapter. He's in the middle of fighting all of his own men, and then at the very end of this chapter, we're going to get a kind of him like remembering one. I think it's like looks like it was a conversation that he had with his mother, and his mom is telling him about this place called Avalon, which is basically seems like it's a similar kind of place to Vinland, where Thor was telling that guy that slave who was dying, he was telling him about Vinland, and how there's not going to be, and here it says, it's a name of paradise. It says, it's everlasting spring where the fairies live, a world far removed from death and old age. So it's, I think it's interesting. We have like all these different ideas of what the afterlife is. So the Christians, obviously, they have their idea of heaven. And then we have this instance where we have, I guess we're going to call Ascalon Welsh or Celtic, some kind of that lineage. And they have a mythology for Avalon. And then we have the Danes, who have the idea of Valhalla. And then we have Thor's talking about Vinland. So there's just these different ideas of what the afterlife is, and they all seem like they're very similar places when they're described, but they all have different names. So it's just interesting to see, the different perspectives on, the afterlife for everybody seems like it's a very similar place, but they just have different ways of getting there, or they have slightly different expectations for whenever they get there. So that is basically the end of this chapter. And
I was confused at the end of this chapter. I was like, what is this little like vignette at the end of this? But you're saying it's Ascalon and his mom.
I think that's what it is. Because he mentions Lord Artorias, who's Ascalon's the descendant of Artorias, right? And so I think that's reference to his own lineage.
But yeah, I was just a little confused by that. But yeah, thanks for explaining.
Because it is definitely like tone shift. It's like middle of the battle, and then scene with.
Now we're in a barn feeding a sick woman.
Right. Yeah.
Like it's like, what is going on here?
Yeah, but I think it's just like him remembering like maybe this last scene where he says he is a warrior and a true king, be his wisdom, be his sword, and then one day, and then we don't get the end of that conversation. But yeah, that's the end of chapter 33 here.
Yeah, and I'll pick up with chapter 34 called Avalon. So at the beginning of this chapter, we are opening up with Ascalon's battle prowess. We just see him going ham on all of these mutinous men. But Ascalon has been bloodied. He's landing good hits. Like even one hit, he's like driving his fingers into the eyeballs of like his opponent and taking him out that way. And then the next scene, he's got like the bloody fingers, but he's also has blood running down his face. It looks like he's taken a cut to the forehead. And people are attacking him, and he's like flipping him over his shoulder. He's going head to head, and then he takes an axe to the back. And like again, we see just like how superhuman our main characters are, because an axe to the back is going to end anyone. Maybe not quickly, but like that is a critical wound that's going to kill you. And Ascalon responds by cutting the guy in half. Like his sword just goes down from the center of his forehead, like
through his helmet.
Down. Yeah, through his helmet, all the way down. And he said, "That hurt, you little brat." So he's not even like mortally wounded. He's just like, "Oh, that hurt," But he's angry about it because he doesn't like getting hurt. Yeah. So, and then we have like, the manga being like, all the men are like, gasp and and like, what was that? And I love the lines that they draw like next to these flabbergasted faces. It's just like so tropey to me, but it's so funny because like I can totally like I can hear what's going to happen. The sound effect that would go with it. Yep. And then like the gasp, like the stock anime gasp that happens of like the people, like I just like hear it in my brain, even though it's just like one frame in the manga. And then they're all just commenting on how strong he is. And Askeladd is going to make one last play. He's going to give out a speech here. And he's going to say, you know, like, all right, you guys are, like, getting the best of me. And I want you to know that if you guys come for me, like, you are going to have some killers on your tail. Bjorn and Thorfinn. And then, what's this guy's name? Thorgrim.
All right.
So Thorgrim is like kind of like the leader of the resistance to Askeladd, and he just is speaking to his archers, and he's like, "Go for the legs." And so Askeladd is like riddled with arrows, and he's like, ugh. He's like on the ground with 2, 4, 6, like 7 arrows sticking out of him. And I think they went for his legs, like, out of a sign of, like, respect. Like, they didn't want to full out just kill him.
Right.
But they definitely aimed to incapacitate him. So, at this point, they are trying to recover Prince Canute, but because... or do they have him now? They were able to get him, right? Let's see. That's right.
I actually don't remember. I think we don't. I don't think we get that in this chapter. Because we still haven't gone back to that scene with Bjorn and the priest and all them. So.
Okay. But we're going to pick up with Askeladd, who's just been riddled with all these arrows. And it's like he's having like some last moments with his guys, and then some arrows are going to rain down on them. And who's going to come walking and waltzing up into the picture? Thorkel. And it's funny, they have a frame of him in front of his men, and like the tallest person in the group is like coming up to his elbow. Like Thorkel is just like so massive over like all these other people.
He's like a Goliath type figure.
Yeah. And then we're going to flash to Thorfinn, who has kind of like been derelict in his duty to protect Prince Canute. You know, he tried. But he is on a horse, and he sees the army in the distance. Yep. And he knows that Askeladd is in trouble, like he's been injured. And we just get these last 2 frames of Thorfinn grabbing his knife, and then he's got the crazy eyes going a little bit, and he's riding this horse full tilt towards the confrontation going on between Askeladd and Thorkel.
But the opening of chapter 35, that's the real crazy eyes.
Oh yeah, that's that's the big one. And the yell and the scream that's going on.
The art, we always talk about like, you know, the story in Vinland Saga, but the art is just really good too. Just the way that like how all the motion is depicted. Whenever things are happening and all the action scenes, is just really well done. So,
and they also have like these comical, like, I mean, I'm going to use the word tropey again, just like there's this one scene of Thorkel at the beginning where he's just like munching out at like his banquet table, and like,
and they made him like fat.
Yeah, they made him like fat and just kind of like, I'm eating food here, blah blah blah. You know, like that was kind of the impression. Like they'll change it up just to like drive a point home. And Tyler and I, like, in that scene where Thorfinn is eating the really good Canute soup food, there's a frame, I think it was on page 48, where it's just like a bunch of dots and some dialogue, and Tyler and I were looking at that together, and like on like 2 or 3 pages later, we kind of figured out like those dots were indicating that Thorfinn was just like mentally checked out, and he's not really like participating in the conversation. He's just kind of like, it's going in one ear and then going out the other. And so like it took a second to decode that, but yeah, like I think about that approach. I look at this picture of Thorfinn and his rage and his crazy eyes, and it's such a striking picture. And then I think of like Thorkel's like, I'm just eating food here face.
Right.
And so like they do take like liberties. And like I like the face shots where they like make someone look dark.
Right.
And they animate them differently, like with shadows cast across their face, or their eyes are being particular. Like the eyes are very expressive throughout, like Vinland Saga. Like they kind of draw your attention to the eyes, and they draw the eyes in different ways. Yeah, it's interesting. You want to take us through chapter 35?
Yeah, the beginning of the end here. So we have Thorfinn. He is coming for Askeladd, as we saw at the end there. And then we get a scene here with Thorkel. He's kind of confronted all of the people who they've incapacitated Askeladd, and they're all just standing around. And he's like, we're going to explain to you. And he's basically, what's this guy's name again? Thorgrim, I think.
Yeah, Thorgrim.
Yeah, so Thorgrim is trying to explain to Thorkel. He's like, we need to go get we're gonna go get the prince for you because we know that's what you want. And then it shows a picture of Thorkel just like sitting there listening, but he's just like picking his nose, like he doesn't care essentially. And then Thorgrim's like, we've got a trick up our sleeve. Just get a load of this, and then. Thorkel just turns around and just walks away. He's like, he goes straight to Askeladd. He's like, so you're Askeladd. Well, you look clever. He's like, I can't help but notice that Thorfinn's not here. He's got
this obsession with getting back with Thorfinn.
Right? You can just look at his eyes. He's like, can you tell me where Thorfinn is? He's like a little kid. He's like, I just want to meet my little friend again. Yeah, you are right. The eyes are very expressive, especially on page 189. Just seeing his eyes, and then you look to the next frame where you see Askeladd's eyes, kind of giving him a little smile there. And then in the next scene here, we have Thorkel's like, well, that clears it up for me. The wait's over, boys. You can kill them all except for Askeladd. And so it's like interesting because all of these people who were trying to betray Askeladd, they were like, okay, if we betray Askeladd, that means we will be able to survive. But the opposite is what happened. They did the betrayal, and instead of surviving, they all died. And I just find that's almost like poetic justice, where it's like the scene, with Judas betraying Jesus. He gets his 30 pieces of silver, and but then later on, I don't know if this is actually I think this is in scripture where it's told that he went and hung himself later on because of he couldn't live with what he did or whatever. So like the thing that he thought that was the right decision turned out to actually be what caused his death. And similar scenario here where all these soldiers are like, we're not on board with how Askeladd's doing anything, but of all the people to betray, Thorkel is not the one who is going to, respect that, because he is a true Dane, and he's like, in his mind, you're supposed to be loyal, you're supposed to fight to the death, you're supposed to have honor, and all of these things, and that is, whenever Thorkel hears what they've done, he's like, well, I don't care about any of that. And because of what you did, I'm just going to kill you all. But he says later on, he's like, I'll give you all, true Danish death. Like, you can all pick up your swords. We get that scene where they're like, whoa, hold on. Don't do that. Don't do that. After he makes this, decree. And he's like, pick up your weapons. You can die like warriors, all this stuff. Thorkel is definitely like a true Dane. He like wants them to have a warrior's death so they can all go to Valhalla, even though they did the whole betrayal thing. You know, in his mind, if you die a warrior's death, you're still going to get to Valhalla. And so there's like this interesting scene further on where we get Thorgrim, like a confrontation between Thorkel and Thorgrim. And he's like, pick up your axe. He's like, I'll give you one good shot at me, basically. And like Thorgrim basically just like, he has like this blank stare and he like just goes completely like, he's basically lost his mind essentially. And I love this is on page 195 where you have this super crazy stylized Thorkel with his, he almost looks like this like horror kind of version of the character where he's got these crossed axes and his face is very like triangular. It almost reminds me of like It.
It's very horror-esque. His nails have like turned into talons essentially.
Right.
His eyes are like, it's just the whites of his eyes, and it looks like he's got fangs. And like I think it's just him, like you're seeing the inner core of like Thorkel. Like he is the monster. Like he revels in like ending people. Yeah. And like improving his strength, and I think he just kind of pops out of him in this situation, and Thorgrim is just kind of like flabbergasted.
I think this is actually Thorgrim's perception of what he's seeing, because in the previous scene, look at Thorkel's face. He's just kind of like smiling on 194, and then you have this scene, and then you have, you know, Thorgrim dropping his axe and going, oh my gosh. So I think this is like his perception of, like, he's facing death. And
yeah, that's a good call.
This is what he is seeing in his mind. And this is what causes him to like basically, like his mind just like blanks out and he can't comprehend. And I mean, even Thorkel comments, he's like, he's gone on the inside. Hello, you know, and yeah. So that's interesting, but I like that. I like that art. That's very well stylized. Just kind of painting the picture. Of
I liked it too. Yeah.
But then in the next scene, we get Thorfinn. Thorfinn is here, and I just love this scene where he comes in, and like Thorfinn is like super raging, and then we have Thorkel who's like, Thorfinn. He's like so happy. He's like he just found his lost puppy or something. He's like, wow, my greatest dream has come true. I'm so happy. It's like the stark contrast between their faces is like hilarious.
It's really good.
And even on the next page, you just see like, it's like almost like you can see the difference between the two types of warriors. Like you have Thorfinn is fueled, his warrior self is fueled by rage and revenge, whereas Thorkel's warrior spirit is just fueled by like happiness and honor and like duty and like all of these kinds of things. And so he's smiling when he goes to battle, but Thorfinn is frowning and in a rage whenever he goes to battle. So I just find it like different, like how they, like their own inner motivations for why they're doing what they're doing. And you know, whenever it comes down to business, you know, Thorkel can, you know, be angry and, you know, have all the rage come out and do all that kind of stuff, where he just like punches this horse like right in the chest. It's also another great art piece there.
The horse punch. Yep.
Yeah. I just think that's an interesting kind of contrast between Thorfinn and Thorkel. Do you have any thoughts on that, or do you want to add anything to that, or?
No, I just love your description there of like the rage face of Thorfinn right next to like Thorkel's just like happy face. Good, great artwork there. And then this kind of leads us into my quote from the beginning of the podcast.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, we get a scene right before them where a little what do we call them? Panels, I guess. Where Ascalon's like, I don't believe it. because he was expecting Thorfinn to go off and save Prince Canute, but he came back, and Askeladd's just like dumbfounded that this is even happening. And then we get Gabe's quote where he's like, you can't lay a finger on Askeladd. He's mine to kill, essentially.
Yep.
He's my prey. Yeah, he's my prey. And I like this quote that Askeladd has on the next page where he says, "I always thought he was an idiot, but I had no idea. He's a mouse trying to fight a bear." And there's definitely parallels, if you want to make a parallel to like kind of a David and Goliath kind of scenario here, where you have Thorkel is this like towering figure, and Thorfinn, who's this small little boy, and the difference in their weapons also. Thorkel has got this massive axe, and then Thorfinn just has his little daggers that he's fighting with. So the contrast is pretty stark. And Thorkel is already taller, like double the height of grown men, and so he's probably triple the height of Thorfinn here, which is just crazy. And they have this little talk, and he's like, "Did you hear that? Thorfinn and I have decided to duel over the possession of Askeladd. You are all witnesses." And then I like, Askeladd's like, "Did I not get a say in this?" He's just like, "I guess you guys are just going to fight for my life. Whatever, that's fine." And then at the very end, he's like, "Don't expect a repeat of London." That's Thorfinn. And then the final scene is, "That's what I was hoping to hear, son of Thor's. The last of his warrior's blood." So, and I also like that there's a level of respect from Thorkel to Thorfinn. And,
Well, he took out his fingers. And I'll just take us on a little side quest.
Sure.
I believe that in the book The Subtle Knife, the carrier of the subtle knife is marked with that same exact injury, the loss of those two fingers in that way. So it's interesting that that's an injury that happens here and also in another book.
What's that book about?
That is the second book of Philip Pullman's trilogy.
His Dark Materials.
His Dark Materials, Golden Compass, Subtle Knife, and the Amber Spyglass. So that's the Subtle Knife is it has the ability to cut through dimensions, and that's how Lyra finds her way into our world, quote unquote.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's very cool.
Maybe we'll do that series on the podcast at some point.
Hey, A+. That would generate some good discussion.
Cool. We will keep it in mind for future episodes. That's where we come to the end of this section of the book. That was the end of chapter 35. And what did you think of this whole section of the book? I personally really enjoyed it. Just seeing, the art was great. I loved the cliffhanger at the end because we don't actually get to see the battle between Thorfinn and Thorkel. I loved seeing all of the different things with the betrayals. This is one of the major themes that I put up. So, like, we have betrayal so Ragnar is betrayed by Askeladd, and then we have Prince Canute being betrayed by his own father, King Swen. And then we have Askeladd later being betrayed by his own soldiers. And so there's kind of a flip on the betrayal. So Askeladd is committing a betrayal on Ragnar, but then Askeladd later has a betrayal committed on him by his own men. So there's a bit of a flip there from the beginning of the story to the end. It was just... I'm just looking forward to the next.
This Vinland Saga has been like very fun. I'm really enjoying Thorkel for some reason. I just like his happy-go-lucky attitude, but he is like the villain here, like he is the person like chasing down like the main contingent of people. But I enjoy his character, and Askeladd is deep, and Thorfinn is like crazy, just crazy.
Yeah,
he has the potential to go crazy, and then he does go crazy.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know if I'd consider Thorkel a villain. I mean, he's like an antagonist to our protagonist, who is Thorfinn.
Yeah, that's a better description, more apt. Yep.
I feel like Askeladd is more of a villain. I feel like he has more darker motives. And
he's dark.
Thorkel's motives are more like, I just want to have a battle and, go to Valhalla. It doesn't seem like he has any nefarious motives. Maybe he does later on in the story, but as of right now, I haven't seen really anything about him that's, screams like some kind of dark past, or, he's really gunning for, some terrible, plot that he's had in the back of his mind for years or whatever. So, but Askeladd seems to have that kind of character where he's been planning something for a very long time, and he is
plans within plans.
Yeah, exactly. He's got plans within plans for sure. So I feel like Askeladd is more of the villain in my.
Yeah.
That's what I would consider.
That's an astute observation. I would agree with you.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Yeah, man, I don't really know. I don't really have much else here. I think I had one other major theme that I listed on here. Just the contrast between the earthly father versus the heavenly father. And I kind of talked a little bit about that with my favorite quote that I had whenever Prince Canute is talking about, there's no father who would not love his own son. So if you want to listen to that section again, you can go back and listen to that. But yeah, I'm just loving Vinland Saga, and I'm looking forward to the next chapters. I'm trying to think of like, what would I predict happen? Do you think Thorfinn is going to kill Thorkel, or what do you think is going to happen with the battle that we're going to get in the next chapter, presumably?
I feel like that's the only option, because we know, don't we know that Thorfinn survives from the flashback at the beginning? Or is the beginning of the book is the start of this journey? Is that right? When they're invading that city that's on the water. Is that the beginning? Because then we do the flashback, and then where we see,
I don't know if we've gotten to that scene yet.
Yeah, so I feel like Thorfinn has to win. Or he could escape or something, but yeah, I feel like Thorfinn is going to win, and then I don't know what the army's going. Well, because they're obviously outnumbered. That group of 500 guys could kill Thorfinn and Askeladd, and especially because they'll both be injured. So
yes.
Yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, we'll have to see what happens. I don't know. I don't know if there's going to be a winner and a loser. It might just end in some similar way where one of them escapes, or I don't know what's going to happen with Askeladd, because he's got all those arrows in his knee and his legs. So it's not like he can just get up and walk away.
I don't know. He does seem superhuman sometimes.
That's true. He does. Maybe he'll have super healing or something. But yeah, I'm not sure what's going to happen with the battle. I'm just looking forward to seeing, it actually play out and see what's going to happen with it. So
yeah, it really left us on a cliffhanger. You want to see the Thorkel fight, and it's just it's in the next chapter. Right. And we both have made the for the podcast, we're not reading ahead. So
right.
We're both, we want to get in there and see it right now.
So we're going to stop recording right now. The podcast is over, and we're going to both go read chapter 36 of Vinland Saga so we can find out what happens. No, but I'm interested also with Prince Canute. I'm hoping that he's going to have some big kind of character moment where he fully comes out of his shell. I feel like we're already kind of seeing that. He's having a lot more outbursts in terms of emotion, whereas he didn't express basically any emotion in the first part of the story where he was introduced. So, and I think, yeah, I'm interested to see just where he goes with his own father. If he makes it back to him, will his father try to kill him again? will he be able to, consolidate power and get his inheritance back? Is he going to have to fight his brother for the throne? Yeah, I'm just kind of interested in that kind of whole part of the storyline with that succession. And I'm kind of rooting for Prince Canute. Well, one, because he's a Christian, so I kind of like him already as a character, as a fellow Christian. And so I kind of want him to see, I want to see him be, the best character that he can be, and to, like, I don't know, fulfill his destiny. I'm putting that in quotes, whatever the Lord has for him. I want him to do that to the best of his ability. So
he has strength in his faith. You can tell just by the way he challenges the priests. Like,
yes,
he believes in God, and he is trying to draw his strength from there. So so that'll be interesting
as well. Those are my two big things: the fight with Thorfinn and Thorkel, and what's going to happen with Prince Canute. And I don't know. Do you have any other thoughts before we wrap up this episode?
No, I think we hit it all.
Cool. All right. If you guys want to continue on your journey with us in the next episode, we're going to be doing this same book 3, but it's chapters 36 through 42. And so you can read along with us if you want to. And looking forward to Vinland Saga. If you have a friend who's looking to get into manga, give him Vinland Saga. This is awesome. Cool. So make sure to check out Pages of Light on our website, pagesoflight.com, and you can also check us out on all of the different social platforms. Go and check out the YouTube version as well. Go and subscribe to the channel, and you can also check out the other videos I have up on the channel as well. And make sure you go over to any of your podcast apps if you're listening on podcast form, on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and leave us a review there as well. And also don't forget to go check out Gabe's new podcast, The Quarantine Quartermaster. Q2 and the Boss present The Last of Us. Is that the official title? So if you search
Q2 and the Boss present, is the title of the podcast. And then I have in the thumbnail The Last of Us, and then I'll update the thumbnail. Because I made that thumbnail in less than an hour because I was so anxious to post it. I was just like, I need cover art. Go. And then I signed up for Canva, found a design, signed up for the 30-day free premium subscription, did the editing, made 2 copies, 1 square, 1 16:9 ratio. Posted.
There you go.
Sorry. It's all on my mind right now. Sorry.
Yep. He's making it happen. So go check that out. Put it in the description below. And thank you guys for watching or listening. Remember to keep reading and to share the gospel with somebody this week. And we will see you all in the next episode. See you later.
Bye.